My name's Margaret Dunn and I'm the founder and now the secretary of the Discovering Old Welsh Houses group. Our vision is to celebrate Welsh architecture through the study of traditional houses and learning about the people who lived in them. We work with a number of partners across North Wales, and we also buy in specialists to undertake tree ring dating, that's dendrochronology, and also to do the architectural recording.
Dendrochronology is quite an expensive thing because it's so specialised. It is possible to date the felling of the timbers to a precise season, or at least to a very small number of years. And we've raised a lot of money to pay for something like over 100, 120 or 125 analyses, mostly from private charitable organisations. We're standing outside Tŷ Mawr, a beautiful house in an idyllic setting. This house was originally an open hall house, probably dating from the early 16th century. But in the later 16th century, it was modernised. A floor was put in and a new roof built. The dendrochronologists have been in and they're able to date the truss behind me to 1565. That dates the felling of the tree, and it's a very precise date, and it's almost certain that the house, the roof, would have been built within a year or two of that. Downstairs, there's the fragment of a crux. It was embedded in the wall when the whole thing was recased in stone, but nonetheless a very, very important piece of evidence for the early development of the house. We wouldn't have known without it. Tree ring dating, even if it doesn't get a precise date, can tell us a lot about the state of woodland management, about the health of the trees, whether they were diseased, whether they were healthy, whether they were under distress, or even in some cases whether they were dead already when they were used.
The way we work together with professionals and volunteers is probably unique in Wales. We've found so many houses that nobody has known about. There are probably hundreds that nobody knows about even now.
My name's Barry Evely and I've been nominated in the research category for the Lost World of the Welsh Chapel. When I first moved to Corris, we were introduced to a little tiny tin chapel that the locals called Capel's Inc. And it was just such a beautiful little place. When you got to hear of the stories of how it was used as a community centre, it was a women's institute, it was a Sunday school, I started to get more curious about Welsh chapels, and travelling around, you did actually start to see more chapels that are being closed. And I decided that instead of it just being a hobby, I actually wanted to sort of try and find out more about the Welsh chapels, and so approached the Royal Commission, and since 2016 I've been systematically going through the list, documenting those chapels that are closed, so there was some record before they were converted that could actually be kept for memory, really, because the architecture is so stunning. It's a shame to actually lose that. To me, these were still sort of living and breathing pieces of history. They were community centres, they were probably the forerunners of comprehensive schools. They played such a tremendous part in Welsh culture. It was local people that contributed to their building, and without that community, these places just wouldn't exist.
This building obviously has a really strong history, and that history is the history of the culture of this region. In the early 1800s, essentially people were leaving to go to the New World. Lewis Jones was the guy who led the initial mission to Patagonia, and he was from this chapel. He was a member of the congregation, so a lot of people there were feeling like we would like to have a Welsh community in the New World that remains as a Welsh-speaking community.
Sadly, the picture isn't brilliant. that since the database was last updated in 2011, of the 4,000 chapels I've researched, 1,000 are now no longer in use. If you work that out mathematically, that's the rate of sort of almost 3 chapels a week.
Women's Archive of Wales was founded 20 years ago to raise the profile of women in Welsh history and also to safeguard the sources of women's history in Wales, because without sources we haven't got a history. We were very concerned indeed that women's history is being ignored and neglected, and we felt that this was a gap that needed to be closed. These women had worked from 1945 to 1975, they were still alive, still active, still very feisty, and we needed to record them before it was too late then. This group of women were now in their 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s. The factories had closed or moved abroad, so it was vital that we did this work before they disappeared forever. And so we identified them and we went out and did an oral history project, sponsored particularly by the Heritage Lottery Fund, the Ashley Family Foundation and Community and Unite Unions.
My name is Margaret Morris and I worked in 2 factories on Farsfarch Estate. Today's people don't know about the factory work, what we've done years ago, and what the work was. It's hard some of the time, but the youngsters won't know today. You could go into a job, don't like it, and go into another job tomorrow. Now you can't get no jobs. It's hard to get a job now. But for them people to know what it was like for us, and you walk to work if there's no buses, or it was in the snow, which I have done, walked in the snow. Don't get paid in this no gwyn.
The times were very often very difficult. There were times when men sometimes died very young and they were left to bring up children by themselves. There was not a huge amount of money around. A lot of women had to walk miles to work in all weathers. The financial contribution that these women made were critical. It put food on the table and a roof over the head of their families. There's one lady I spoke to, she was a widow and she had 6 children, and also she was looking after her elderly mother, and she walked to work every day, and she managed to ensure that those 6 children had a university education by going out to work, which is an amazing achievement.
We're very proud as well that we've been able to produce a website, a book on the subject, and also a musical production, and we've inspired a series on BBC TV called The Factory Girls. So it's been a huge project run by a group of volunteers.